In this video, I'll show you how to upgrade a Minecraft village. The default villages are cool, but with a bit of time and effort, I know we can create something really awesome. This is obviously a pretty big project, but if we break it down into several steps, it becomes a lot easier. The first step is to do some basic terraforming. I like getting rid of all these weird kind of water pockets that Minecraft generates for some reason. I hate those, they look super bad, so just getting rid of those alone can make a huge difference to how your terrain looks. And then I also like getting rid of any weird gravel or sand patches, those can be kind of distracting. And then the last thing I'm doing is just kind of getting rid of any awkward straight edges or badly generated terrain that I'm seeing, just kind of smoothing everything out, making everything look natural. But if we take a look at the before and after, you can see it makes a huge difference to how our village is looking without even touching any of the structures. And this leads me into the next step, which is upgrading the houses. This can seem a little bit intimidating at first, but I promise you it's not as hard as it seems. I'm keeping the basic shape and structures of the houses the same, but just adding a few extra details and a few different blocks to add some variety and interest. I add a bit of depth using some stairs and trapdoors just at the front of the house, and then I really like changing the roof trim color. That just means having a different color for the outside of the roof than the inside. It looks really good and just makes it look a little bit more interesting. Before upgrading the houses, you can see they're made almost entirely just out of oak wood, which is pretty repetitive, so adding a few different blocks into the build can make it look a lot more interesting. I added dark oak and spruce to this house, as well as a chimney just to add some animation and life to the build. The next house we're upgrading is actually the blacksmith. I had a lot of fun with this one. I added a bunch of spruce and dark oak, changed the roof design a bit, and then added an entirely new forge, which I think came out pretty cool. And then I also just scattered in a few small details like a furnace, armor stand, anvil, just a few things that a blacksmith would need. This next house is more or less the same idea, just added a few different kinds of blocks to add some variety. And then I also upgraded this wool awning at the front of the house, added some banners to it to add some interest, and I'm really happy with how this one came out. The main feature of this next house was the double doors at the front. So to add some depth, I made the doors indented, added some barrels and stairs to the front, and then I also added a chimney just to give it a little bit of extra detail. The last house we're upgrading was super blocky, so I totally revamped the roof. I made it into this nice curve, which I think looks a lot better. And then I also added some leaves and some flowers to the sides of the house as well, which added a really nice pop of color. Like I said, this is the last house that we had to upgrade, so this leads us on to the next step, which is upgrading the structures. Along with houses, Minecraft villages also spawn with a variety of structures, such as animal pens, farms, wells, and more. The first one I'm upgrading is the farm, so I got rid of the old one and then created some walls out of cobblestone and mossy cobblestone, and then I hid some water using some trapdoors, and then I'm just tilling all the land and then filling it with some wheat seeds. It's a pretty simple design and doesn't take much time to build, so I'm really happy with how it came out. I like it so much in fact that I'm building a second one where this other farm is. It's pretty much the exact same design, just building a wall out of cobblestone, hiding some water with some trapdoors, and then for this one I decided to do both carrots and wheat just to switch it up a little bit. The next structure I'm upgrading is technically an animal pen, but I decided to make a tiny little custom pond instead since there was kind of some water there. I simply just created a bit of a crater, added some different stone blocks, dead coral, and then I created some custom lily pads, which I think came out really cool. And then I also placed some sugarcane, ferns, moss around the pond, just to make it look really natural. There was this path that led into the water, so I decided to turn it into a dock, just using some spruce logs and slabs. And then to create a little bit of a guardrail, I used some gates and trapdoors. Overall, I think it's a really nice design and came out quite well. Villages often spawn with these hay bales scattered around, so that's something that I wanted to keep in this village. But to upgrade them, I experimented with a couple designs, but ultimately came up with this idea of these super large hay bales. If you've ever driven down the road and seen those on the side of the road, you know what I'm talking about. I think they came out pretty cool and are a nice touch to our village. I thought this pathway leading over the water would be perfect as a bridge, so I used some campfires and trapdoors to create a path across, and then to add some guardrails I used walls and gates, which actually creates a bit of an arch design, which I think looks super sweet. The last structure that I'm upgrading is this gathering area. It's basically just this tree with some bells beside it, and to make it a bit fancier, I'm creating a circle out of some andesite and stone, and then I'm adding the tree back, but of course it can't just be a regular tree. I'm building a total custom tree, which I think came out super nice. If you want to learn how to build custom trees, I have a few tutorials on my channel, so be sure to check those out. With the final structure of the village upgraded, it's time to move on to the pathways. I'm replacing all of the bland, normal paths that the village normally spawns with, and I'm replacing it with coarse dirt, rooted dirt, brown concrete powder, and then also just using some moss blocks and stone slabs around the paths just to make it look a little bit more natural. And I'm ensuring that the path leads to all of the houses. Sometimes the paths normally in the game don't really kind of connect everything up together. So just kind of fixing all of that, making sure that everything flows nicely together. I try really hard to avoid straight lines, always making sure my pathway curves and flows, which will make it look a lot more interesting. And I can't stress enough how much adding vegetation, flowers, grass, leaves around your pathway is going to make a huge difference to the overall look. And of course, I'll mention if there's any pathways that aren't going anywhere, you should get rid of them. It's just going to be distracting and not really make any sense. At this point, our village is nearly complete. I'm just going to add some final details and touches to tie everything together and really take it to that next level. The first detail I'm adding is this custom little waterfall. I think it came out really nice and adds yet another natural element to our village. The next detail I'm adding is some custom trees. Adding trees really ties everything together, and they're perfect for kind of if you have any blank areas where you're not really sure what to add. So I decided to add both oak trees and spruce trees. Having this variety of 2 types of trees looks really nice. And then of course around the trees I like to add a little bit of more vegetation, scatter in a few flowers, add some coarse dirt, moss blocks, just stuff like that to really tie everything together. I added a few more spruce trees to the other side as well, along with some more flower patches and coarse dirt and moss blocks. And the last couple details that I scattered around was some lampposts and benches. And with that guys, our village is actually complete. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like, as it really helps out small content creators like myself. If you want a closer look at this build, consider supporting me on Patreon for the world download. Thank you so much for watching, and happy building.